So I would agree with that. But if you're going to say the Republican Party are the best party for Black Americans, then they need to show it. Also about races, reparations is not based on race. It's based on status. A Black person who comes here from Nigeria or Jamaica or Brazil, they're not owed a penny from America. They chose to come here. We are talking about the people who are freedmen, the descendants of people emancipated by this country. We still know those people because you are one of those people. I am one of those people. A lot of those people here in the audience, I just told you I could break down my genealogy. My dear Nana was 101 when she died. My great-grandfather just died 3 weeks ago. He was 100. He remembers fighting alongside white veterans in World War II. He remembers coming back and seeing his white veterans get homes and lands and pensions and the door being slammed in his face. And we are going to say that America that says liberty and justice for all, that's okay, get over it, keep it moving, while we have to hear never forget for everyone else's tragedy. And as far as from where reparations will come, I need people to stop thinking is going to come from their tax dollars. Look at all the trillions that America spends right now. We talk about inflation, the invisible tax. We have something called the PPP loans. Do we remember the PPP loans? America spent $6 trillion on PPP loans. You know what they just did? They canceled all of it. And we didn't even know. America gave the corporations, the banks alone, $29 trillion. You know what they did with that? They canceled all of it. So let's stop acting as if America is as hamstrung by debt as they want to pretend. Because when America wants to pay for something, they find a way to do it. And truth be told, the corporations, again, aren't hurting. The defense manufacturers aren't hurting. It's only Americans who are hurting. And that is a choice. We all know it's a choice. That's why we're running for office, because we know this country can do better. So I refuse to accept that this country can't do right by a people they've wronged for centuries, and I refuse to accept that any justice-minded person thinks that's the right thing to do.
Well, I did, but I'll say that that's the best explanation that I've heard of that, so thank you for that. The third issue that I talked about earlier here was fighting against legal plunder. And that is the government taking from us what doesn't belong to them. So, absolutely. But the income tax they take from us, they need to give that back. If they've taken from anybody, they need to give it back. And that's not just minority communities. It's
anyone.
Legal plunder is rampant in the United States through the taxation and the trickle-down economics that corporations are getting, and almost it influences all of our lives more than we even know. And that has to be fought against by anybody in Congress. One of the other things that I would love to talk about, and I don't think it's going to be in this thing, but if you look at the retirement of congressional members, that has to be revamped. They get money for life because of something that they did for 8 years. Give me a break. Like, come on. In the military, I served for 24 years, and it was, I had to do 20 to get half of what I did. They're doing 8 to get a full pension on lifetime. That's crazy.
And don't even do a good job at it.
That's crazy. That has to be revamped. And that's just, it's too much of our money, taxpayer money, going to congressmen and senators and in any government position that begs to be redone.
Yes, going back to the issue of the published part. I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Go ahead.
If I may address the issue about this supposed switch in the parties. That switch is not evident. The Republican Party today is the Republican Party of freedom and opportunity. We still hold values to that. If you want to be free and live as a free American, then it's the Republican Party. We were the party that ended slavery. Democratic Party is the party of segregation. The Democratic Party was the party that had with working in step within the Ku Klux Klan, a terrorist organization during that time period. That was the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party was the party that wanted to secede from the Union. You still have California wanting to secede from the Union. The Democratic Party is the party that promotes race. They're always talking about race, 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 race this and race that and race this. And they're the racist, in my opinion, racist party in the history of American politics. It's not the Republican Party that's racist. It's the Democratic Party that is promoting division of the races by identity politics. We're all Americans. We are all under one flag. And we should all work together to bring about a brighter future for our community. And again, if Mr. Clyburn was here, he's been the CEO, so to speak, of the 6th District. And why is the 6th District the poorest one in the nation? In South Carolina, and ranked in 2022 the 6th poorest in the whole country. So if the Democratic Party is about lifting people up and making sure that everybody is on a level playing field, I don't see it. That's why I'm in the Republican Party. We're going to fight to make sure that the playing field is level, that you can thrive and not just survive, and that you have an opportunity to decide what's for dinner and not just be given the crumbs off the table, which is what the 6th District has been getting for the last 30 years. And again, time for that change.
Wow, it is actually hard to believe that, considering most people have switched to the Democrats and won't even consider the Republican Party as a friend. I mean, think about it. A party that says after Charlottesville, there's good on both sides. Come on. I mean, you living in the 1800s, man. Shoot.
Next question, when we get into this stuff. What specific steps will you take to improve educational outcomes, address infrastructure needs as part of the change, to ensure all children in District 6 have access to quality education?
Well, it starts with the parents being involved. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. And at that level, then you have adults who get with the children and expand what the core instruction is. It's not just about reading, writing, arithmetic. It's getting community things done. If you added civics and the students were out with adults actually improving their community, they would learn a lot of things. They would learn to read, write, and interact with each other. Put their phones down and get stuff done. I mean, that's where it all starts. And the other thing is, again, we talked about bringing the money home that we're spending overseas and building the infrastructure so that we have good, solid brick and mortar schools with security so we can keep the guns out of there. I mean, there are ways to do it. We are the richest country in the world, and to have 1 million unhoused, hungry children, we should be ashamed of ourselves. This is embarrassing to live in this kind of community where this uniparty, this gentleman who thinks has total ideological difference from the other one. Most of us who are independent don't see any difference, except maybe a little drip of ideological difference. But we need to dismantle that empire, that 1% rule. Here's the perfect example. 2 big parties holding their national conventions in a big auditorium, big convention center, right? But up above, in the suites, were the oligarchs who are looking down at them, laughing the whole way. Oh, you're going to tax the rich? Ha! Go for that. It's all BS. We know better, and we, the citizens, have to take control to make it all work better. Thank you.
Well, first thing, I want to co-sign, parents need to be involved. And while I'm not necessarily a fan of what people like to call big brother government, I do plan to mandate parental involvement. How that looks, I will meet with parents to find out how. But I'm a teacher and I go to work every single day. And I can tell you one of the biggest challenges we have in schools is that student behavior is absolutely out of control. And that means some parents are sending their kids to school to learn, and instead their kids are being exposed to horrific levels of violence and misbehavior that their parents would absolutely have a heart attack if they knew what goes on in some schools today. Number two, I am a fan of vouchers. I do believe in forming community schools. I don't like the fact that because you live in this zip code, you must go here and you have no options. I believe we're going to say that parents are their child's first and most important teacher, then let's give parents the resources and let them make the decisions. Speaking of my ancestry, my history, my great grandmother told me when she was young that sometimes they all went to school in a little church and they were taught by sometimes people they didn't know how to read themselves. And yet when they left those schools, they were all fully literate. They knew how to read, they knew how to write, and they knew how to take care of themselves. So I believe that we need to empower communities to actually give them a chance to address the educational challenges. If a parent wants to homeschool their child, yes, there has to be accountability, as Mr. Simpson mentioned, but we need to get them, have them make that choice. If a community wants to form their own schools, let's allow them to have that choice. Let's provide people with more options instead of holding them hostage to the public schools. As far as public schools go, I do feel we need to pay teachers a lot more. We do need to have mandated parental involvement. We do need to have more guidance counselors and school psychologists, because not just the kids, but even teachers are having mental health challenges because of some of the issues they're facing. I think we also need to make it easier to remove kids who are chronically disruptive, violent, and very disrespectful. That's one of the reasons why people are having hard times finding teachers right then and there. And as far as addressing infrastructural needs, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, encouraging and making it easier for people to go to vocational schools, they get those vocational skills, and they can be the people who build up the infrastructure that we sorely need here in South Carolina District 6.
Might be one of the easiest answers that I have to give. And the point is this: the federal government should not be involved in a local school. It is a state, county, local issue. The federal government has no business mandating what happens for education. They require the states are required to offer free education. We had such problems with our children in school, we homeschool now. And we're so much happier for it. Mm-hmm. The schools they've got problems.
Yes.
But it's not a federal government issue. Get the federal government out. They have no business doing it. It needs to be a more local level with more involvement and not the top. It has to come from the top.
Well, first thing I would do, I was a public school teacher. Number one, we need to reduce teacher class size. You've got 25, almost in some cases 30 kids in the classroom. It's very difficult on that teacher to be able to provide the type of instruction that's needed. One is reduce teacher class sizes. Number two, has already been mentioned, we need to increase teacher pay. For all the work that teachers do, and many are unappreciated, they don't continue into the profession, and they leave and they go somewhere else, or they find another job. And so that is hurting public education. Now we don't have a seasoned teacher in the classroom, and in some instances, some school districts are getting teachers from other countries, like the Philippines or other countries, to come in because we can't find enough teachers. So one, reduce class sizes. Two, make sure we're paying our teachers more money. And three, we need to make sure that our schools are safe and secure. We don't want students slaughtered and killed in the hallways that we've had in school shootings. So why can't our schools be as safe as our courthouses and our airports? So that when children come to school, they can focus on learning and not worrying about whether they're going to make it home that day. So that's another thing we need. And then the last is this. I agree with the gentleman on the end about making sure that the federal government stays out of public education. And the reason I say that is because now the federal government is indoctrinating our students with progressive ideology. And that is hurting our students, confusing our students instead of them learning how to read and how to write, how to do the basics so that they can have those jobs and skills, vocational skills. They're learning things that don't really apply. And it's very sad. When you have men or boys who want to compete in sports that are for girls, that's wrong. When you have a boy who thinks he's a girl and he's going into the girls' bathroom, that's wrong. When you have individuals who put out books that are not age appropriate in our schools to indoctrinate our children at a very moldable age, I got a serious problem with that. And so a lot of those policies come from the federal government. They took out phonics. When I was a school teacher, an English teacher, they took phonics out and they replaced it with whole language. As a result of that, we have a generation of children who can't read. They replaced the traditional math with new math. Now we've got children and parents can't help their children do the new math because it's too confusing to do. All of that came from the federal government through teacher unions, indoctrinating children. So we need to get that ideology out of the classroom and get back to teaching the children what they need to know so that they can be successful. And that's what I would do to help kids public education.
This question begins with Mr. Dixon. With the recent bipartisan efforts in South Carolina to expand voting access while also implementing measures to ensure election security, such as the Comprehensive Election Integrity Resource released by the South Carolina State Election Commission, and the reforms passed in the new voting law, how do you plan to further ensure that elections in Congressional District 6 remain free, fair, and transparent? And additionally, do you believe that the current measures are sufficient, or do you see areas where improvements are still needed to maintain or enhance voter confidence?
I actually feel there's some improvements needed. I don't know where this belief comes from that, and they like to use Black Americans in this excuse. They like to say, oh, well, voter ID laws are racist. My great-grandmother was 101. She had ID. My great-grandfather had photo ID. So I do believe that photo ID requirements should be added, okay, and should be maintained. I also believe that now people talk about the invasion at the southern border, but we also have people who are being flown into our country that are in this country illegally. I think people should be required to prove that they are a citizen before they vote. People always say, well, non-citizens can't vote, but there is actually research showing, even though it's very small in number, but it actually does happen. I believe we need paper ballots, okay, to always track the votes. These machines, look, I've taken cybersecurity. I have a cybersecurity background as well because I was trying to get out of teaching for reasons that we just mentioned. And you'll be surprised, or maybe you will not be, how easy it is to hack into those machines. They used to do cybersecurity conventions, and one of the first activities people had to do was hack into a voting machine. It's extremely easy to do. So I have no problem with us going back to paper ballot. If you want to have an electronic method as a secondary option, that's fine, but a paper ballot option needs to be required. Number 4, there were some issues that happened when I first ran for office underneath the Democratic Party, which was a whole mess. That's a whole other conversation. And it was hard trying to find out whom do we speak to get answers to questions. We've made it so bureaucratic. I think we need to make it where there's some layer of accountability. Not you go through this big bureaucratic mess. You got to figure out you call that person, you call that person, and it's all very esoteric and all very shadowy. So I think we need to make it where there's more localized patterns, where it's easy to trace who vote and have some ways to follow through on who casted the ballot.
That was some scary shit.
Yes.
But what it comes down to is that a federal government thing again, or is it run by
Local.
the state?
Local.
Government? Doesn't belong to the federal government. Put it where it belongs. It doesn't need federal oversight. It requires individual oversight and understanding of your communities, of your places of voting, communications that you're going to have with the people that are there. It's not a government. Use my cursor.
Yes. I think what we've done in South Carolina is a good job for elections in South Carolina. I do believe from a federal level, we want to make sure that only citizens are voting. That's imperative because we cannot allow people who are not citizens to have a say or a vote in our elections because they're not citizens. Number two, we have to end the practice, I would, on the federal level, of ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting is a practice that's been going on in a long time when folks send out absentee ballots and then another person other than the person that is being sent to is taking the ballot back to the voter registration office. That practice has to stop. The only person that should be able to bring that ballot back is the person who it was sent to. That would cut down on a lot of issues as it relates to our election integrity. And third, we have foreign entities that are influencing our elections through fake Facebook accounts, spreading disinformation. We have to, as a country, crack down on the folks who are doing that and stop it so that our elections are fair, our elections are correct, and that there's no issues regarding the validity of our elections. And that's one of the things that I would make sure that we do is end the ballot harvesting. And also, I am totally against, now, and I would propose this from a federal level, of sending a ballot to every single registered voter. I think that practice is wrong. If a person wants a ballot, they should request one, not send everybody one. We don't do that in South Carolina, but other states they do that. That creates the probability of election fraud when you're sending out ballots to people who haven't even requested one. And then you can allow anybody to be able to bring it back. So those are the three things that I would do from a federal level to make sure to keep our elections free and our elections fair.
Well, I would have to say that this so-called fraud in elections is pretty much a farce created by the oligarchs who want us to fight over it. Again, throw us out some crumbs, make sure we're divided. The election reform measure that I offered has 10 components, like I said, with that election day holiday being one. I mean, we should be celebrating each other's right to vote and party with each other at the polls and make it a grand day. But those who have ID and they're in the right place, they shouldn't have to pre-register. Why can't they show up on the same day as the election and vote? If they're in the right place and they got the right idea, we need same-day voter registration. That's another thing that we can correct. So a couple other components there are ending the gerrymandering. We talked about that. Easing ballot access for those of us. We are lucky in South Carolina that we were able to get on the ballot without that much difficulty. But other states don't allow it. If you try to run outside of the uniparty, forget about it. You're not going to get on the ballot. I mean, we can fix primaries. Primaries are a joke. Right now, they're held up. Like if this gentleman got in and he's fucking his party, which none of them do, well, then we'll primary him. So primarying is a weapon. That's garbage. Let's get rid of that. Just have one open primary for everybody to vote, and then the top 5 get to the general election, and then you have instant runoff. Those, in other words, you rank the choices. You pick 1 through 5. If nobody gets a majority on the first round, you drop off the lowest one, count them again, count the 2s until somebody gets a majority. You eliminate the runoffs, which bring half the people out the second time around in South Carolina, and you save millions of dollars running that second election, it doesn't have any purpose. There are many other ways we can fix it, but the system itself is what we should put under the microscope to fix. And this peripheral, fix this, fix that, tax this rate, that's all just distractions, especially social issues. I'm surprised you didn't ask us about those, because those are more distraction issues. But yeah, let's keep advocating for this election reform. It's a good thing that we are talking about. So thank you.
I will agree with Joe. The duopoly is strong, and they feed off each other, and they know it, and they're happy with it because in terms, whoever gets in power, and they're fine with that. If we are not required, we should want to learn about everybody running. A lot of people don't educate themselves on people they're running. Do I agree with them? Do they have the same views that I do? Because the information is out there, but it's not well known. Because the duopoly is.
And another thing you could take to vote to protect voting integrity is to deport those who are in this country illegally. We talk about corporations who are trying to import a new labor force because they don't want to pay Americans a fair wage. We also have them trying to import a new voting constituency. We have this thing called birthright citizenship, which may not even be constitutional in America. So they're saying, oh, you blacks are demanding things from the Democratic Party now? How dare you? All right, let's just open up the border. Let's have them have babies, and they'll be voting for us, and we can ignore you even more. So one way that I'm going to protect voter integrity is by making sure that we deport those who are here illegally, and we go after the politicians who are incentivizing this illegal immigration invasion. Because if corporations can't import their own labor force, then politicians should not be able to import the new voting constituency because they don't want to meet the needs of Americans. And as much as I hear my fellow freedmen, my fellow black Americans talk about the Republican Party wants to take away our right to vote, it's the Democratic Party who's bringing in millions of new voters so they can ignore us even more. And that is one of the biggest threats to our vote than anything else, that is going to dilute our voting power. We'll go from being this percentage to now being this percentage, and we're going to have people who are loyal to other countries now voting in our election. This is not something I'm saying as a nightmare scenario. It's already happening. California is doing it. You see what a mess they are. Maryland's doing it. You got New York and DC that want to do it. Imagine people just getting in the country 5 months ago, don't even speak the language, but now they have a say in how our country works. That should not happen on any level. Black Americans are already to the bottom of a nation that we were essential in building, and now they're letting other people come here who are hostile to us and decide how things are going to work for us in our country, but they will never allow us to do that in their country. That's another way we need to protect our voting integrity right there.
The next series of questions is going to be questions that you really don't have to answer. That's what I'm looking for, is just simply raise your hand, yes or no. Okay? And the reason for this, for everybody to understand, the reason for this form of questioning is because if you are fortunate enough to be a congressman, you will have to vote on issues, and you should be able to say how you would vote if you were given the opportunity to represent the district. The question is, would you vote for or against allowing manufacturers of guns to be sued as they were able to be sued up until 1994? Yes or no?
I vote against that, no. I will not allow gun manufacturers.
It's important, you understand why I'm asking?
Yes, sir.
It's important to see how. I put you in that chair. I mean, if we put you in that chair, it's important to know how you vote. You would vote no.
I would vote no because it's not the gun that is the issue, it's the
Okay,
person. That's
so
the
gun
issue.
manufacturers should not be able to.
Not for that, no. I wouldn't agree to that either. If I take my car and run people over with it, you can't sue Toyota because I did that, so I'm not voting for that either. Right.
There's no reason.
And I'm familiar with that case, and I agree they should not be sued because a person did something awful with something they made. No.
Would you vote for term limits on Supreme Court justice?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Would you vote yes or no for an amendment to the United States Constitution to make Election Day a national holiday?
Yes.
I don't think you need an amendment for that.
Election Day, a national holiday.
I don't think you need an amendment.
I don't think you do either, but I will still support it.
Anything then,
Yeah, I've heard the
anything.
thing. Absolutely.
Require.
Yes, election day needs to be a holiday.
Get rid of Columbus.
Last question. Would you vote yes or no to add number of Supreme Court justices? Vote no.
No.
No, because they'll make the court invalid. I mean, you'll just keep adding on this part. I want this, so I'm gonna add on. It'll just be invalid. It'll never end. So leave it alone.
Court needs ethics and term limits to fix. Those two things will fix it. You don't
Right.
need to change the number. Term limits and ethics will fix the court. You don't need to add numbers.
Because you let the parties have their way, you'll have 59 Supreme Court justices. They'll just keep adding on until one of them gets their way. So no, leave it alone. Huh?